The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.
Opposites may attract, but the struggle to make it work is real. Tonight we'll hear how a thrill-seeker's near-fatal motorcycle accident tested the resolve and commitment of his risk-averse mate. First up, how a 30-year-old Supreme Court decision on tax policy shaped outcomes for Canadian working women and sort of still does. Also, why car thefts are and aren't really happening at record levels. We'll explain what that conundrum means. It's Thursday, January 26th, and that's next on The Agenda. As Canadians sit down to struggle over their T4s, T5000s, and all the other Ts for their income tax returns, they'll likely be focused on the dollars and cents. 3 decades ago, a Supreme Court of Canada ruling raised a much bigger set of issues: how those tax deductions reflect what society considers valuable. With us now to explain and highlight a few other things you might want to know about Canadian tax policy, let's welcome Bhuvana Rai, who is a lawyer at Moores and Tribute Tax Law. Nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
First time ever, right?
Yes.
Good stuff. We're going to go through 5 things people should know about Canadian tax policy. Ready? Here's number 1. 30 years since the Supreme Court case of Symes versus Canada. What was that case about?
In some ways, it's a case about business deductions and what's a permissible business deduction. The meat of the case, though, is that it's about a lawyer who went to the Supreme Court arguing that her childcare expenses should be deductible from her business expenses. That's groundbreaking because before that, no one had ever really tried to litigate this issue and think about whether or not childcare expenses are a valid business deduction. Children and business don't always mix, so maybe I'll take a step back and explain why that might make sense.
Sure.
She was a lawyer, a partner at a law firm, and she argued that she could not be a partner at a law firm. She couldn't go to her job. She couldn't run this business without actually having a nanny at home to care for her children.
Who was therefore a legitimate business expense.
And that was her argument. So the test is, is this something that is connected with your business, and does it allow you to make a profit from your business? And so she argued, without this nanny, I could not have gone to work. I could not have been a lawyer, and I couldn't continue to run a business and earn income from my business, so it should be deductible.
What did the court say about that?
There were, at the time, as now, there were 9 judges on the Supreme Court, 7 men, 2 women. The men said it should not be deductible. The women said it should.
No kidding.
And so that's the law today.
That's still the law today?
Yes. Courts have held that childcare expenses are not legitimate business deductions, except to the extent that you get a small childcare credit, whether or not you're an employee or a business owner, but you don't get to deduct a nanny's salary, which would be a substantial part of your income.
Let me do a little speculation here. There was a time not that long ago, we had 4 women and 5 men on the court, and the Chief Justice was female. Nobody thought about taking a new case before the court on this, given that change in demographic?
I mean, maybe that case would have been decided differently today. Partly because, we recognize for a lot of other types of expenses that there are personal elements and business elements. And so to the extent that there's a personal element, we often look at it in the context of how much does it relate to your business. So maybe it would have been decided differently today.
Let me get this straight, though. This is 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You could not write off childcare expenses.
Yes.
But you could write off a membership at a golf club.
Depends. So a golf membership, if you just had the golf club membership, that's not deductible. If your golf club was using not quite more than 50% of its assets towards golf and that kind of entertainment, then no problem. You write it off as a business expense.
And is that still the case today?
Yes. You are not allowed to deduct club dues or golf club dues if you are only paying them to an entity that is just a club or a golf course that is only providing those services. But if it's a business club that happens to have a golf course as 40% of its assets, your club membership would probably be deductible.
Well, I should ask you, do you think it's passing strange that you can't deduct childcare, but you can deduct part of a golf membership?
Well, I mean, I think that's the question that the Supreme Court had to consider. It's never going to be easy to decide whether or not something that's partly a personal expense should be deductible, but we've come to terms with a lot of the other parts of this, right? We've said when it comes to meals or client entertainment, fine, there's a personal element, but there's also a business element. So we let you deduct half, but you can't deduct half of childcare expenses.
You can't cut the kid in half, can you?
Apparently not.
No.
But I mean, you could cut the expenses in half.
Yes. Can you give us another example of something that maybe in the light of today might seem kind of off or odd in what you can or can't deduct?
Sure. I mean, in the past, I mean, the courts have long held that, golf memberships, even if they're just for golf, even if they're green fees, should be deductible. And it wasn't until something called the Carter Commission came into place evaluating the fairness of various types of tax credits that the government changed the law. Not the courts, the government changed the law and said, okay, we're not going to let you deduct green fees now. But all sorts of otherwise personal seeming things, whether it's an expensive car, right, a flashy Rolls Royce, or some sort of extravagant, client entertainment venue. All sorts of things are deductible, whether or not you're getting, really just business benefit out of it. And that's something the Supreme Court mentions, right? The dissenting women mention these examples as things that they perceived as unfair about the majority reasoning.
Okay, that's one thing about Canadian tax policy. We're going to go on to the second thing we ought to know,
All right.
and that's more to do with write-offs. Who decides what's eligible for a tax write-off and what's not?
Okay, well, technically, the Income Tax Act decides what's eligible for a tax write-off. But the way that it decides is by telling you that you can deduct, if you're a business, right? Employees have different rules. If you're a business, you can deduct everything that you use in the course of legitimately producing income from a business, except for a few things, one of which might be expenses that are primarily personal. So that leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
A lot of discretion there.
Yeah, and so the CRA's administrative policy, general rules of accounting, all of those things go into determining whether or not something's a legitimate business expense. But the ultimate rule is, does it lead you to making a profit from your business? Is it actually reasonably connected? And does it have a substantial personal element? And does it fall into various other rules, which are all enumerated in subclauses about what part of something might be deductible or not? But that's the general rule.
I guess I'm wondering if at the end of the day, it's a bureaucrat at Canada Revenue Agency that makes the decision, or is it an elected person, like, for example, the Minister of Finance, who ultimately decides?
It's an elected person. These rules are very much decided by the Department of Finance. CRA might interpret them, but it's very much decided by whoever's writing tax legislation. Problem is, they've left it so open that ultimately the courts have often decided whether or not a haircut is deductible, whether or not, these types of outfits are deductible, but not other ones. Which, by the way, is why ABBA has crazy costumes. It's for a tax reason.
Come on, they spent all that extra money on clothing?
Yeah, they
could write off more.
They revealed that their crazy costumes were because of taxes, because they said that, look, we knew that ordinary clothing wasn't deductible. That's what our accountant said. And so we decided to get over-the-top costumes that you couldn't wear on the street, because those are deductible.
You really can't wear those on the streets, can you?
Yeah, you really can't. So I think they had a good argument.
Does the tax system, well, I know it does. Tell us how it advantages some professions and/or jobs over others.
Well, I mean, I think one example that I think has been very controversial lately is, certain types of professionals are allowed to incorporate and have shareholders who are not part of that profession. So doctors, for example, can do that, which allows them to distribute the earnings within their corporation, within their families, and that's a public policy choice. Lawyers and accountants usually can't do that. So I suppose that's one example of that. But I mean, on the other hand, these are specific and purposeful public policy decisions, which might make up for other bargaining chips that, aren't in play for lawyers and accountants as opposed to doctors.
I well remember Bill Morneau, the
Yeah.
former finance minister, tried to make some changes to the way doctors self-incorporate. And oh my goodness, the blowback he got to that. And eventually he had to stand down on it, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a hard decision to make federally, because The provinces are negotiating with doctors. The provinces have made concessions about what kinds of businesses incorporate and how. And so for the federal government to step in, I mean, I think that's a little bit of a difficult position to be in.
Well, because I think if the Department of Finance federally was going to claw back more money from doctors by refusing to allow them to incorporate, you knew they would go after the provinces then to get higher fees for the services they perform.
Yes,
So
exactly.
they were going to start they weren't just going to have a big fight with the doctors, they were going to have a big fight with the provinces as well.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. That's 2. On to number 3. 3 things we need to know about tax policy. There have been several news stories recently about the inability of Canadians to create large, successful businesses. We got a lot of small businesses in this country. Almost 2/3 of the Canadian labor force is apparently employed by small businesses. Do you know why in terms of tax policy, do you know why so few small businesses end up being big businesses in Canada?
Well, that's a really complicated question, and I have a little bit of insight, but I can also tell you that the rules are in flux. They're changing with domestic and international pressure. So, I mean, we're taping this today. It might change overnight. But all that said, I think one of the concerns that I hear from small business owners, particularly those in the IP space, is that a lot of the credits and a lot of the help that we give businesses in Canada often stops when a business gets big. So when a business is a so-called CCPC, or a Canadian Controlled Private Corporation, it qualifies for certain tax credits and deductions that it does not qualify for if it becomes too large by having too much taxable capital employed in Canada. That's one reason that it might make sense as a small business owner to ensure that you kind of stay small for maybe longer than you would otherwise. And then maybe you decide to go international by going to the States.
Should they change the tax code to continue those advantages even when you become a big business?
I mean, I think that if they did that, right, then we would just get a lot less revenue in taxes from businesses, right? So it's a difficult decision. And I think that ultimately, these are questions of public policy, and Canadians get to vote on it.
They do. You know, there used to be an old joke. You know how to start a small business in Canada?
Go ahead.
You start a big one, and then you just wait a while, because things used to be tough.
Yeah.
Is it still that way? Does that joke still work in tax circles?
I mean, I think there's a recession, so who knows? There's
lots to complain about.
Yeah.
Okay, that's number 3. We're going to do 5. Here comes number 4. 4 things people should know about tax policy. The CRA is not bound by its own representations.
That's correct.
What does that mean?
Well, if you call the CRA and you ask them for help with a problem, they will try to help. Every agent there is trying to do their best and to try and give you the correct answers. But if they don't give you the correct answers, they're not actually bound by that. And when I say that, I mean if they don't understand your situation or tell you to do something that they believe is correct, but they don't actually understand your situation and it turns out to be wrong, you can't tell them, well, you told me to do it this way, so I'm holding you to account. Tax law is something where you just have to get to the correct answer. And so the CRA can come back and say, well, look, we might have told you that, but it was wrong, and we are required by law to assess correctly.
Does that make any sense?
We vote on it.
Okay, so at some point, some politician actually said, that's the case. It may sound unfair, but tough luck, that's the way it is.
Yeah, so in fairness, I'm being a bit glib. The courts have said that, you know, the Minister of Finance and the Minister of National Revenue are required to work together so that Finance, you know, writes the laws. Minister of National Revenue is responsible for administering them, and that they must administer it in accordance with the Act, which they've taken very literally. So even if the CRA makes an incorrect representation, they're still required to administer the law as it is and not as they read it.
When you have clients come to you and they say, yeah, but I called CRA and this is what they told me, and you say, well, they told you wrong, so I'm sorry, but we have to do the opposite of what you just did, what kind of reaction do you sometimes get from clients?
I think people generally expect that when they get information from a public agency that it's going to be correct.
No kidding.
But, I mean, the Taxpayers Ombudsman disagrees. I mean, they've done audits of the CRA's phone services, and I think at one point it was 60-some% of the answers that were being given out were correct, which means over 30% of answers were incorrect. So there's a lot to learn from, but, you know, the truth is it's a giant agency which is tasked with doing almost everything that relates to money, right? That's really hard. It's hard when your budget increases suddenly and you're hiring a lot of new people to take on roles. I guess I would like to wait to see how they deal with these issues as they grow.
Gotcha. Okay, number 5, last one. If your tax residence is changing, let's say, for example, you wanted to move to the United Kingdom for a year or two, you should close out all of your registered accounts. So say the experts. Explain.
So yeah, a lot of people think you should definitely close your accounts in your RSP right away. That may or may not make sense if you think it's definitely going to be a temporary stay, you're going abroad, you intend to come back right away or at a fixed time, you're not establishing tax residency elsewhere. That's one scenario. But if you think you are leaving for an indefinite period of time, you should really consider doing it. If you're leaving Canada permanently and you haven't made contributions to your RSP within the last 2 years, you're allowed to close it and take the money out. And that probably makes sense for you to do if you don't think you're coming back, right? Because otherwise you just have a registered account locked in this country that you can't even use or access while you're in this other country, right? It doesn't really make sense. When it comes to a TFSA, though, you might have bigger issues because...
Tax-free savings account.
That's right. Because the other country might not recognize the tax deferral. It's a pretty unique type of account in this country, and so you might just get taxed on it in the other country. So the TFSA is the more problematic account to try and keep if you are leaving and you might have dual residency or just get residency abroad. The other problem that people have is that they have sort of regular contributions to their RSPs and TFSAs, and they might get assessments from the CRA saying, hey, you know, your contribution room has increased by so-and-so. Well, the CRA doesn't know that you're taking a non-resident status for that year, and it takes them a while to adjust that. So if you actually contribute up to that limit when you are out of the country and you're not planning to be a tax resident of Canada, it might take years for the CRA to realize that you had less room than they told you you had, and that you actually owe a lot of it in tax now.
There we go. We promised people 5 things they should know about Canadian tax policy, and how many did we deliver?
5.
We did indeed, because we always deliver here. I want to thank Bhuvana Rai for coming in today to our studio and helping us out with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thieves stole more than 8,000 cars in Toronto last year, a major increase over previous years, and such thefts are not just a big city problem. With us now for a closer look, Tara Hodgkinson, assistant professor in criminology at Wilfrid Laurier University, and we're very happy to have you here in our studio. First time, I think, isn't it?
Really happy to be here. Yes, first time.
Excellent. Sheldon, you want to bring this up? We want to show some headlines. This is, on the question of is car theft in Ontario on the rise, here are some of the headlines. This is off CTV. New tricks leading to alarming rate of car thefts in Toronto. Then from the CBC, a major increase in auto thefts in 2022 has victims and industry experts calling for action. And this from the Toronto Sun, organized car theft ring bust nets 215 stolen vehicles, 51 arrests, York cops. Okay, if we go by these headlines, it would suggest that we've got a major problem on our hands right here. Is that, in fact, the case?
I think, I don't want to deny that the numbers have increased in the last year. They absolutely have. And so I think to say that they haven't would be silly. Of course they have. But I think we want to take these headlines and these numbers in context. And so largely we've been seeing a slight increase in the last couple of years in auto theft. We've seen a very dramatic increase in the last year. But overall, over the last sort of 20 years, which is generally how we'll look at things in terms of data, the trend is downward. And so we really want to consider why we might have seen a spike in the last year or so.
What do you come up with?
Well, we have to recognize that the last 2 years we've had COVID, and COVID had a significant impact on crime. So in nations like Canada and other nations like the UK and the US and Australia, we saw steep declines in crime. It was probably one of the most fascinating trends we've seen over the last sort of 25 years in crime. And so this is comparing to something that was probably a record low for Canadians. So 2020 and 2021, most crime types, including property crime types like auto theft, declined substantially. And so if we compare it to the last 2 years, of course it's going to look like a massive increase because COVID was a record low for most places.
So a little perspective is in hand here.
Very important, yes.
Okay. Do we know whether or not most thefts of automobiles take place in a homeowner's driveway or somewhere else?
We don't actually currently know. So a lot of, there is data to indicate where that generally happens, but the suggestion is that most of the auto thefts that we've seen in the Canadian literature tend to occur in parking lots that aren't supervised, in driveways that don't have carports, or that's very Australian of me, but
we know what you mean.
You know what I mean, yeah. Garages. And so there's a lot of places that are more prone or more susceptible to having automobiles stolen, but generally we don't have a solid idea on where that is in Canada.
Why not?
It just hasn't been researched. So the data isn't as strong in Canada. We don't tend to have access to it. We don't tend to have specific XY coordinates, so i.e. address level data. So that makes it very difficult to determine exactly where those locations are. We do have some, but not enough.
You know when this really got on people's radar? Do you remember what happened that put this on people's radar?
I don't think I do.
Okay, everything in life is about the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Fair enough.
Do you remember when Mitch Marner got his car stolen?
Is that where you think it started? Is that where the conversation began?
I tell you what, now this is purely anecdotal evidence. I don't have academic research to base this on. But when Mitch Marner got carjacked,
yeah.
I noticed a lot more people talking about, oh my God, car thefts and carjacking and all of this. It's really up, isn't it?
Yeah.
It sometimes takes something big like that, I guess, to put it on people's radar.
Yeah, and once it can be noticed by one person who's potentially famous, we tend to see those kinds of things crop up in the media much more.
Okay, if the numbers then relative to COVID are actually not as fearsome as those headlines suggested, why do you suppose that is?
I think that oftentimes we have folks who don't fully understand trends in crime, right? So either they don't have access to the data, and that is absolutely an issue in terms of having access to this information, but it also can indicate that we're trying to get support for particular programs, or we have folks who have increase in ownership. So, for example, automobiles have been purchased at a record highs in the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. And so that literally means there's just more automobiles to steal.
Product out there to steal.
Absolutely. And so I think a lot of where we're seeing this conversation occur is around newer cars that are highly desirable and easy to move. Not necessarily as easy as they were, 20 years ago or 15 years ago, but definitely much easier now.
You do say 20 years ago. Is that when it was peak auto theft, 20 years ago?
Yeah, so 2000, roughly. And then, of course, in Canada, we introduced electronic immobilizers, which was mandated at the national level in 2007.
Sorry, translation? Electronic
so what that
immobilizers?
means, yes. What that means is essentially you require the key to turn over the car ignition. So, 20 years ago or 25 years ago, we could hotwire a car. It was actually relatively easy. You cannot do that in any car that was made 2007 plus, because that electronic immobilizer essentially prevents the car from being started without the key in the ignition or the key present in the car.
They have figured out other things, though.
They have.
They have.
Yes.
What did I see the other day? That somebody said online, don't put your keys by your front door.
Yes.
Because they've got remote readers or something like that that
Yes.
can actually start a car without the key.
Yes.
The key's in the house. They've got this remote reader, and they can steal it right out of your driveway that way.
So that's a much more advanced approach, and we are seeing that there are, of course, adaptations to these kinds of security measures, right? So we've had new security measures put in place and offenders adapt. But this is much more sophisticated than it has been in the past. So typically, a lot of our auto thieves in the past would have been young kids. They would have been hotwiring cars to get home or to go to parties or to do other things. Now we're seeing that a lot of that is much more sophisticated. So it means there's less offenders, which is a good thing, and also why we're seeing less auto theft in general. But it does mean that when it's being done much more sophisticated.
In which case, who are these increasingly sophisticated people who are more responsible?
We don't really know at this stage. So the police would obviously have a better intel on that than we do, because we don't generally have offender data in Canada, so we can't identify who these folks are. But it would suggest that this is much more organized than it has been in the past. And so there is some indications that we do need to deal with that organization of auto theft, but we still need to take that in the perspective that auto theft in general is much lower than it was 20 years ago.
In terms of technology, are the auto manufacturers putting more sophisticated technology into the design of their cars to make them harder to steal?
I think so, absolutely. I mean, the mandate of the electronic immobilizers is a perfect example. It essentially made it impossible to steal cars for a long time.
The old-fashioned way.
The old-fashioned way. And so we are seeing adaptations to that, but those adaptations are still quite slow. Right? And so we're not seeing a return or a regression to the mean. We're not seeing a return to average, essentially. And so there are going to continue to be this sort of back and forth of trying to beat out the offenders. But I think that we're seeing automotive companies really making an effort to make it more difficult to steal those cars.
So if it's not kids out on a joyride now, is it organized crime? Is that who's behind more of it?
We don't know. At this stage, we really don't know. And I think that the way in which the cars are being stolen would suggest that that is potentially what's occurring, because the cars that are being stolen are highly desirable and they're moving offshore. And so there is suggestions that that's the case.
Well, we know this. We know they're being stolen, sent down to a harbor, put on a container ship, sent overseas, whatever.
And that's, you know, responds to a lot of things we've had in the last couple of years. We've had a shipping crisis, so it's made it difficult to get cars into the country as well as out.
Who would have thought the bad supply chain problem was actually good for the...
Help some folks out.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that bizarre? Now, what about reporting? We know there are obviously innumerable types of crime.
Yes.
How diligent are people about reporting when their cars are stolen?
So auto theft is the most reported crime type. And the reason for that is quite simple. If your car is stolen, you generally want to get the insurance for your car. So you're much more likely to report it than anything else. So it's the reporting rates for auto theft are generally around 85%, which is really, really high compared to other crime types.
What, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but what would be a very low reported crime?
Sexual assault.
Okay, so that's dramatically underreported?
It's generally under 10%.
Under 10%?
Yeah.
But car theft's 85%.
85%.
Because people want to,
people want their cars back.
They want their cars back.
Or at least a new car.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. Okay, so in that case then, are we comparing a lot of apples and oranges here when we talk about the prevalence of auto theft compared to other kinds of crime?
I think that if we talk about property crime, which is generally what we'll compare auto theft within, so that's talking about break-and enters, that's talking about theft from, generally all of that we can talk about as one group because they generally are reported well. Whether or not they're responded to and dealt with is a different story, but generally those are high reported crime types, and so we actually can compare those. It's much more difficult to compare those to violent crime types because those are much less reported.
Gotcha. Do you drive a car?
I do.
Ever had one stolen?
No.
Lucky you. Do you know why?
I do some things to prevent that from occurring.
Want to share?
Yes, absolutely. The first thing you actually mentioned already is put your car keys further into your home. Also ensure that one of the things we saw when I was studying this in Brisbane, Australia, was that there was an increase in the co-occurrences of break-and-enters and auto theft. So what that indicated to us was that folks were breaking into the homes to steal the keys, to steal the cars. So less sophisticated than being able to read that electronic immobilizer or that car key, but still very effective. Still an extra step, though. So if you are ensuring your front doors are locked, if you're ensuring that all of those pieces are taken care of, it makes it much more difficult to have your vehicle stolen. Making sure that your key is separate from the car, making sure that you aren't leaving any valuables in the car, all of these things help.
Gotcha. Tara Hodgkinson, Assistant Professor, Department of Criminology, Wilfrid Laurier University. Great to have you here at TVO tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tomorrow on the agenda.
We had a panel of experts, our Housing Affordability Task Force, that looked at the continuum of housing. And as I said earlier, it takes too long to get shovels in the ground. The mix is not what we need right now. So we embedded into More Homes Built Faster a regime of development charge, either elimination or reduction, that will incent the type of housing that mayors like Mayor Maracas, Mayor Taylor, and others who have been on your show have indicated needs to get done. But we have to acknowledge, and I think Mayor Maracas needs to acknowledge, that all three levels of government need to have a role in this. It's just not a role at the federal and provincial level to do this financially. We need to all have some skin in the game.
That's tomorrow on the agenda. In some respects, Steve and Danielle Kaplan seemed a very unlikely couple. He was a free spirit who'd take off alone for weeks at a time on daring motorcycle adventures. She was no daredevil, worked in acute care hospitals, and knew all too well the consequences of a trip gone bad. So, what happened a decade ago? I think you can guess. It's all chronicled in Danielle's new book. It's called I Married a Thrill Seeker, a cautious wife's memoir of her husband's risk-taking and their long road to recovery. And it brings Danielle and Steve Kaplan to our studio. Good to have you two here for your first joint interview, I gather.
Hi, Steve.
Okay, we'll see if you're still talking when this is over, okay?
It's great to be here with you and with Steve.
And with him too.
Yeah.
Both Steves.
Thank you.
I want to go, okay, take us back. Steve, what did you get out of taking these audacious, adventurous trips on your bike?
You know, I think you have to be a rider or somebody out there to really appreciate it. So I used to go to see the beauty of Canada, which was amazing places. I saw the fresh air, the rain, the smell, and I used to always travel on my own. I'd wake up 6 in the morning, ride all day till 10 at night.
Why'd you never bring her?
No, Danielle wouldn't go on a motorbike at all.
You never wanted to go?
No, never.
Because?
So with regard to my history, I had studied, I'd done a master's degree on brain injury, and in fact, many of the subjects or patients that I saw were brain injured after motorcycle accidents.
How often did you try to convince him not to go?
You know, I learned something, you can't change someone. So I supported his desire and need to be a free spirit, but I was always afraid of the consequences, and he knew that, and that's why I would never, ever go on the motorbike with him.
But you always convinced her that you'd be fine, right?
You're right. Because,
Which was true up until it wasn't.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
you're right.
If these trips bothered your wife so much, and you knew that they did, why did you keep taking them?
I think just the allure and just the pull of seeing, the beauty of the country and just being free. I was a risk taker. I always used to think I took calculated risks. And I used to ride pretty quickly when on open roads.
How fast?
Any cops here? Look, generally way over the speed limit.
120? 130?
Way over.
140?
140 on a complete open road, 150, 160. But that was just when I needed to go quickly.
And there's nobody else on the road?
Oh, for sure, yeah. Okay. Although I got one ticket once. But generally, most of it was slow. It was paced. It stopped. I used to stop a fortune, take photos along the way, chat to people. So although I covered a lot of terrain, it was over time, and spent a lot of time in the saddle and talking to people.
Based on your knowledge of him, do you think he thought he was invulnerable on these trips?
So it's a really good sort of way of looking at Steve. I think Steve is a thrill seeker, a sensation seeker, and that kind of person, I think it's brain chemistry. And I think you thrive on the need to have extreme adventures, challenges, for him, speed. And I don't think you ever consider the risks or consequences. And I think that was Steve. He thought he was invincible, that it was everyone else on the road he had to watch out for, but he would be fine because he knew what. As he said, when he thought it was calculated risks, he did his homework. He trained to be an expert motorcyclist, or in the early days, an ultramarathon runner or a long distance bicyclist. So he does his homework, he educates himself, and therefore he believes he's invincible.
Did you believe you were invincible on these trips?
I used to look back, funny you asked that, I always used to look back and say, because I had a motorcycle when I was young as well. And I said, thank God I got through those days, because I would never recommend anybody get a motorcycle when they're young, because then you really think you're invincible, you'll do anything. And when I got my second bike, the more recent one, I always just look back and say, I'm lucky I got through those years. And as Danielle said, I did a lot of training. I did a lot of off-road courses, on-track courses, so that I became proficient in what I did. Did I think I was invincible? I don't think you ever can be as cocky as that. But I thought, as I said, took calculated risks within what I felt I could handle.
What kind of bike?
I had a BMW 1200 GS.
How much? How much did it cost?
I don't know, in those days, I don't know, about 15 grand. You know, Ewan McGregor and Charlie Berman, they did those movies, The Long Way Up and The Long Way Around. They had those BMWs, and that's what got me interested in those, yeah.
Why did you never give him an ultimatum, given your concerns and your background, your knowledge of what could happen if something bad were to happen?
Absolutely. I had worked in acute care hospitals, in spinal, in trauma, in brain injury, and looking back, it was probably short-sighted. I should have given him an ultimatum, but I wanted to support his need to be out there to explore. And in fact, the funny thing is, he had done 5 years of this long-distance bike riding. He had done all these challenges and the Iron Butt challenges, which are beyond extreme. I would call it bravery and courage on 2 wheels beyond. But that final trip that we didn't know was the final trip, as he left, and I'd never said it to him before, I said to him, Steve, if you have a frigging, and I probably didn't say frigging.
Hang on. I got the quote right here. Shelton, top of page 2. If you have a frickin' spinal injury or a head injury or you die on this trip, I'm going to kill you first. If you think you're going to leave me to manage our lives, the kids and the house without you, you are so wrong. Do not get hurt or die on this trip. That's what you said to him.
And that's the first time I'd ever said that. And probably it had been ruminating in me. I had been wanting to say it. And maybe my filter was gone that day. Maybe I was tired, or maybe I just had enough. And the interesting thing, we had gone for therapy over this divide between us. We went to see a counselor, and because I was super anxious about his trips, I would get stressed, I would monitor them the whole way, and until he got back, I could only then sigh with relief. And Steve never understood my anxiety, and he was always wondering, Dans, why don't you validate what I'm doing? Why don't you support me? So we went for help, and we couldn't really agree in the end, and the therapist had said, I need to show more support and validate his passion, and he needs to show more compassion and empathy for me. But we never really got to solve that one.
Well, because at the end of the day, you know, you're either going to go or you're not going to go. If she had come to you, Steve, and said, look, it's either the bike or me, make your decision, what would you have done?
Well, she did that originally, because when I had my Scrambler that I mentioned earlier, my initial bike, I did sell it for the sake of our relationship, then that too was starting. I probably would have sold it. Would I have been happier doing it? Definitely not. Probably would have taken it out on her forever afterwards. But yeah, you know, because family, I think, definitely comes first.
I called his bike his other wife.
All right, let me take you back to that day. It's Canada Day, 2011. You had really a quite marvelous trip planned. What did you want to do?
So the plan was, I'd done it ride a few years ago when I went to Alaska through the Saskatchewan, through the prairies and that. I wanted to do one that was a little bit different, so I went through the States this time. Went through the States and then eventually worked my way up through BC. So
to Alaska?
BC, then to Alaska. Northern BC.
16,000 kilometer trip.
Yeah, but over an extended period, and, you know, having a day's break, you know, every now and again, working. I was sort of working at the same time. Yeah, because, I mean, most of the joy of this actually was the planning and the preparation, especially on a motorbike, because you have limited fuel. So I had to plan every single gas station stop.
2 weeks and change into this rather marvelous trip, you get the first sign that your life's about to change forever. What was that sign?
So yeah, it is that phone call you get, and I'd heard about that phone call from families of patients of mine. It is that phone call you get that changes your life, that you wish you could rewrite the narrative. You wish you could go back, but you can't. And so it's a phenomenal story. It was from a international response center in Texas who had picked up a emergency call from someone in very rural Yukon, and that someone was related to the spot. And maybe I can show it to you and tell
Please.
you about this incredible thing. So this spot is and if I need you to add to it,
Sure.
it is a GPS system, a satellite system, which has three basic benefits. One, you have a website and people can follow. So all of his crazy biker and other adventure friends
She says crazy with love.
Yeah.
Of course, means it lovingly, yeah. Okay.
followed his trip, and they were able to monitor where he was and his distances. The second thing is it sent me automatic messages at the end of the day where his coordinates were. And so this actually created a lot of work for me because I would monitor those coordinates. Is he moving? Is he stationary? And at the end of the day, when I got the final message, I could breathe with relief. And the third most valuable one is it has an emergency button and connects to this international response center in Texas. And so it is, when you think about messages from this experience, every solo traveler needs to have one of these because you can't rely on your cell phone. You run out of battery. This has an extended battery.
Or you get to no cell zones.
Exactly.
You know, place with no
And
signal.
So he was in a no-cell area. He was on a deserted road in the most rural Yukon, in most rural area of the Yukon you can imagine. And we get this call from the emergency responders to say, we've had this signal. In fact, it's come twice. And what should we do? We believe that it is, they first asked me to identify myself and then your husband, Stephen. And my first question is, are the coordinates moving? And they said, no. It's been stationary for about 20 minutes.
What did that mean to you?
So it meant he is down somewhere, or assuming he's down somewhere since this wasn't his good night time. So they said, what do we do? Do we get the RCMP, the Canadian Mountie Police, and emergency vehicles out to him? And I said, yes. And they said, we have to tell you, we're probably about 2.5 hours from his location. He is a very rural location.
And you're thinking?
And I'm thinking, I am going to kill him. On the other hand, we don't know if he's alive or dead. Right. And then the situation is I'm up in the Kawathas at our family cottage with my parents. My children are up in Parry Sound, Muskoka, working at a summer camp. They were teenagers. And Steve is in rural Yukon, and we are spread all over. And now what do we do?
Well, let's put our viewers and listeners out of their misery right now and tell them what you did. You were on the ground, immobile, because...
So it was raining on a sand road. I think it's 500 kilometers up from Toronto to Montreal distance. Raining and moving through potholes, and hit one that was way deeper than I thought.
You saw the pothole.
I saw it, and sometimes, you can, because I saw it, but too many potholes, you can't turn, enough, and I just hit it. It must have been way deeper than I expected, and it was, and I went flying off my bike. That's all I remember, just losing control of my bike and flying, landed up on my back, and couldn't really move.
Do you have any idea how far in the air you flew?
I don't. I just remember coming down with a thud.
And the bike didn't run you over?
No, the bike went on its own into the bushes. I think it was about 60 foot away. And I just lay everything. And it's one of those things that you dread. And I guess the first thing come to mind, well, how am I going to tell Danielle, what's happening here? And especially being so remote.
Did you lose consciousness?
Not at all. In fact, I was so lucid. And I guess it's the adrenaline that must have kicked in that just kept me going, kept me thinking, as clearly as I could.
I hesitate to give away the whole story here because you do want people to read the book and get all the juicy details. But suffice to say, there was a Good Samaritan who got you to a hospital, and there you were, and you eventually joined him in hospital. And I want to know what you thought when you first saw him looking the way he did.
So, it's interesting because I'm so comfortable in hospitals. I'd worked for so many years. And now here I am in Vancouver General Hospital, which they were beyond phenomenal. And I'm nervous to walk into this glass room where he is. And I look at his face and I go, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh my God, he's so tanned. He looks so healthy. And I guess because he'd been enjoying his 2.5 weeks on the road. But I think it might be worthy, and I don't know what you think about sharing a little bit about the spot going backwards, because his road experience was beyond miraculous. And I'm not someone who talks about miracles. I'm a science person. I believe in events happen by the nature of what causes it. But this spot was phenomenal. Can I go ahead
Sure.
and share that little bit? So normally, you should carry the spot on your body, and Stephen used to on a backpack, but for this particular trip, he attached this almost like a walkie-talkie to a metal bracket on the handlebars of the motorbike. And as he said, he flew up in the air, he landed, and he didn't realize it, but he broke his spine and he damaged his heart. And that's why he was completely immobile on this road at dusk in grizzly bear territory. So not a good place to be without a car or a person for hundreds of miles and hours. He hadn't seen anyone. So he's not in a good position. The spot carries on with the bike, which now flies in the air and lands in very thick terrain, bush, where he couldn't see it. Some of the contents of his bike and backpack sort of splattered around the bike. Some fell a little closer to him. But this incredible spot broke off the metal bracket, flew up in the air as if Steve was the target, and landed in his reach because he could not move. So if you think of that, what are the odds of that ever happening? It's like winning the lottery of life.
You think it was divine intervention?
I'm such a science person. It's one of those we can't explain, but if you think it could have landed anywhere, any distance, and it landed in his reach, so he could actually press the button. And I don't think at the time, and you can correct me, Steve, he had any concept of how miraculous that was.
I didn't, because I didn't. Just looking around and seeing this orange object, pushing it, and as you said, press the button twice, because who knows that these things work? You don't know work as advertised. You never know.
And I remember Steve telling me when I saw him at the hospital, and when I first saw him, I was like, Steve, are you okay? And I'm asking, can you move your fingers? I'm going into my complete clinician mode. But I'm really thinking, you silly boy, look what you've done. But I couldn't say it.
Well, there's really two parts to this story. The accident is clearly the first part. You get to hospital, and then you take a turn for the worse. Something else happens to you. And again, I don't want to give away too many details of the plot here. But suffice to say, you're going to die. You're near death, unless they take some fairly heroic actions, and even those might not save your life and may leave you in a condition which you don't want to live in anyway. And your wife has the responsibility to make a horrible ethical decision about whether to let you die or whether to intervene and try and save your life. And if she saves your life, what kind of life is it going to be anyway? How much of all of that did you were out of it at the time, so it was left to her to make that decision. Have you two discussed how she made her way through all of that since then?
Yeah, so I wasn't aware of anything other than when I initially went to have my spinal operation. Thereafter, everything was a complete blank for about 3 weeks, completely. And I knew something, when I started coming around and off the medication and that, I knew something was going on with me, for sure. And working myself off all the drugs and that, I hallucinated, all that. And then eventually, I didn't want to hear from Danielle what really happened because I was scared. I was still going through a bit of trauma and unsure of what's going on. And we waited for a while, and Danielle told me, about 4 weeks into after the event, everything that had happened. And I didn't have a clue. I wasn't aware of that at all.
Do you think she made the right call in real time at the moment?
Well, we did always have a pact that we always spoke about numerous times about quality of life. And in fact, even going into my spinal operation, I'd said to her, remember our pact to quality of life. And I think that is what was forefront in her decision-making initially. Did she make the right choice by changing? For sure, I wouldn't be here other than that. But it was very tough for her, there's no question.
Well, Danielle, the question I'm going to ask you is about the kids, because they're away at summer camp when all this is happening, and you have to also decide how much are we going to tell them, how blunt are we going to be about what we tell them, and beyond that, if he does die, am I ever going to forgive myself if I don't let the kids come out to Vancouver and see him in the hospital? How did you figure all that out?
There was so much to navigate. The one good thing is I'm fairly good in crisis, but these were decisions of such huge magnitude. I mean, deciding whether Steve should go on to this procedure this equipment called ECMO, which is...
ECMO, acronym.
Yeah, it stands for extracorporeal membranous oxygenation. And basically what it is, if I can explain it this way, when a fetus is born very prematurely and their lungs and heart haven't developed, they put on ECMO so it will do the work of their lungs and heart while their heart and lungs develop. In an adult, you have to have a mortality of like 80 to 90%. Usually the 10 to 20% who do come off it don't do so well. So he is really an enigma. And so there it is. That was a last-ditch effort to save him. Steve went into multi-organ failure, so that means his liver, kidneys, lungs, and heart were not functioning, and they were manually bagging him through an endotracheal tube in his mouth. So had they stopped bagging him, probably in the next little while, he would have just peacefully died. So we had to make that decision. Do we try this very last-ditch effort? I have to say that the physicians, critical care physicians, Vancouver General Hospital, and my brother, who's a critical care physician, and we were on the phone with him.
He's from Virginia, right?
He's from Virginia.
He came up to visit.
He came up to spend time with us and to help me navigate. The two physicians, I'm going to say his name, George Isaac, who is another hero of ours, and my brother, Dr. Paul Merrick, together convinced me to give him this last-ditch effort, even though I had said all along the way, my gut feeling is I made a pact. We don't know his quality of life. We don't have a crystal ball. I can't take that chance. I've seen the outcome many times, and he would not want to live like that. And somehow, when you talk about my children, the silent voices of my children, my mother begging me to give Steve a chance, his siblings saying, please, we've got to give him a chance. And I'm like, you don't know what his outcome's going to be, and it's probably going to be very poor, which is hard to believe looking at him now.
It's amazing. It's a miracle.
He was really given, some people said 1%. My brother said actually probably on ECMO and not on ECMO, 0% of survival. I mean, here he is, multi-organ failure, as well as a damaged heart from the impact, as well as...
broken back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Massive bilateral pulmonary emboli. Like, he was as sick as one could ever be sick. And here he sits, having risen so high. So my children, it was hard. I made the decision not to encourage them to come to Vancouver. And who knows? You don't know if you're making the right decision, wrong decision. I wanted to protect them. So I think my goals were protect my children. And once I decided Steve goes on ECMO, save Stephen. And that was just my way of thinking.
Steve, I'm going to give you the last word on this, and that is, in your heart, do you still wish you could get out there and get on that bike and take those trips again?
You know, I don't. 2 reasons. Firstly, when I saw Danielle go through in the family, I would never wish that on anybody. When Danielle stepped up to the plate and dropped every single thing she was doing and looked after me and brought me back and was my advocate. I mean, I don't think I would have recovered as well without Danielle looking after me the way she did and talking for me. And then I've lost my nerve. And to be a motorcyclist, I think anything where you know, it's speed and that, you can't be scared because you have to be confident what you're doing. And I don't think I'd want to get on again. But more importantly, you know, I've got to consider my family, and that's where I want to be.
Well, needless to say, I'm thrilled that this story has a happy ending. And it has resulted in this book, which has brought you to this studio and allowed us to meet you. I Married a Thrill Seeker, a cautious wife's memoir of her husband's risk-taking and their long road to recovery, which looks like it's going pretty well, you Kaplan, so hang in there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
What a treat, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
And that is the agenda for Thursday, January 26th, 2023. Tomorrow, Ontario's Housing Minister, Steve Clark, is here to respond to concerns about his government's plan to get more homes built faster. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.